the destruction of this millet emery, of this millet system, was dramatically shown in the end of the 19th century. They were so-called Armenian massacres in Turkey, which were instigated by the Abdul Hamid II Sultan, so-called Red Sultan, because he was very bloody man regime. But the massacres that it is estimated that about 2,100 or 3,100 Armenians were killed at that time, were conducted not because of the ethnic ideology, the secular ideology, but they were conducted. Should be stated here as in the traditional way of thinking. Armenians were viewed as the so-called gyaos, the unbelievers, and they were put to the public opinion as a scapegoat. Should be destroyed. But the Sultan viewed this mass destruction of this massacres of the Armenian population as a way of easing tension because of the losses that Turkey experienced in Europe, and the loss of territory, for example. And the Armenians were pointed as traitors, as spies of the European powers, particularly Russia. But these massacres were, for the young Turks, as the first experience how to conduct the mass destruction of the whole population and how to make it more effective. But I repeat here, the Sultan or the Sultan regime had no ideology. Ideology was this new, very important factor that provided the reasoning why the whole population should be eliminated. Because New Turkey, this great Turkey from Bosphor to the Central Asia, should be a Turkish one. Turkey for the Turks. And all other populations which had a very specific religious, cultural and national identities, they should be all eliminated. There should be no place for them in this new great Turkey. And it applied to the Armenians, because they were the most numerous, but it also applied to the Greek population, or for example the Assyrian Christians in the northern part of Syria, that were which was under the Turkish rule at that time. And so as we look at other genocides in the 20th century, then as you all know, the ideology was this secular religion, which provided the reason why the whole population should be exterminated. And that's why the archetype of this genocide should be viewed here in Turkey. Okay, and the second thing which should be mentioned here, as in this context of archetypical genocide, it's international context. International context between the mass destruction, this genocide, happened during the First World War. And Turkey entered this war in 1914 as the ally of Germany. They were in the alliance. And this great war provided opportunity, but also the cover for this ongoing genocide. So, international context of this genocide. International context. The First World War as opportunity and cover. And for example, as you look at the destruction of Jews, the Holocaust, during the Second World War, it's a typical example. The war as an opportunity and cover for this mass destruction of the whole population. And earlier in Turkey, the Young Turks applied the Great War as the first regime in this context. And we have an ample evidence of the Armenian genocide in Turkey during the First World War. We have many testimonies of the, for example, Western diplomats who were in Turkey at that time. For example, the American ambassador Henry Morgenthau, who had several conversations with young Turk ministers about the ongoing genocide activities of the authorities. We had, for example, a good collection of documents provided by one of the great British historians, Arnold Toynbee, for example, a huge collection of the Lutheran pastor Johannes Lepsius from Germany, who traveled to Turkey at that time during the First World War, and who should be viewed here as one of the eyewitnesses. And we have a huge collection of photographs who were taken at that time, for example, by the German engineers and by the German officers who were in Turkey at that time, working on this great project of building a railway line between Berlin and Baghdad. And they were just in eastern Anatolia as the genocide took place. So the evidence, the sources are very ample ones, and one of the main problems in researching this Armenian genocide is difficulty in getting access to the Turkish archives. It's very difficult also in this time to have this free access, in fact, a very good one. And because the Turkish activities, I will come back to this subject, but the Turkish authorities view this subject as a way of aggression against the Turkish state or interfering with internal affairs. So the pattern of destruction first of all, the Armenian elites were destroyed, were killed. The clergy, teachers, lawyers, for example, officers of the Armenian origins were arrested in the spring of the 1950s, and they were put to the so-called special battalions, which were in fact a good opportunity to shoot them all. So the Allies and the rest were driven from their homes to the so-called places, so-called safety places in Syrian desert, and they were killed in these marches. They were basically women, old people, and children that were put from their homes to the so-called safe places, but these marches were through eastern Anatolia were in fact the death marches. This genocide was also archetypical, in fact, as far as, for example, sexual abuse were concerned, because in many testimonies, one comes upon the descriptions of the mass, for example, rapes of the Armenian women who, for example, didn't want to convert to Islam. And this religious background of this genocide was cynically played by, used by the Young Turks as a good device to incite the aggression, the hatred for against the Armenians. There were several places where, for example, Muslim clergy was also involved in this genocide activities. For example, the signs for the mass murders were cries from the minarets. But as far as the whole process, as far as the whole genocide is concerned, the religion was in the background. The main ideological the main ideology points were concentrated around this ethnic issues. But looking back at these Armenian massacres, Young Turks on purpose make use of this religious hatred against the Christians. And at about 1,500,000 victims of this Armenian genocide should be mentioned here, should be remembered here, because it is roughly estimated, because we have no, as I've already told you, we have no access to the Turkish archives, which have documents concerning this topic. But the whole population of the Armenian people was wiped out in Turkey. And what about the reaction of the world? And now I would like to come back to my first remark, that when I was doing my research work in Poznan archive on Prussian censorship, the subject of the Armenian genocide came upon me. Because I was doing my research concerning the war censorship in Prussia. And I found the whole collection of articles that were forbidden by the special war censorship, military censorship, during the First World War. They were all articles in Polish, from Polish newspapers, periodicals. And one of them, the whole article, the long one, was forbidden because it described the mass destruction of the Armenian people in 1950. And the remark of the censor was that we shouldn't allow the publication of this piece because Turkey is our ally. So, the high politics applied here. And it was for me a sort of shock. And it is also a tiny element of this great subject, which is the commemoration